Take a block of ice cut from a frozen pond in the dead of January and carry it down into a dark room dug into the side of a hill. No wire runs to that room. No motor hums in the corner. No fan, no compressor, nothing a man could rightly call a machine. And then come the middle of August, when the corn stands tall and the air is so thick and hot you can scarcely draw a full breath, you walk back down into that dark, and there it is. Ice. Hard, clear, cold ice. Enough to chill your milk and your meat in a jug of water clean through the hottest month of the whole year. Cut in winter, kept through summer, on nothing at all. My name is Elias Yoder. I am Amish, and I farm here in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. And I want to tell you today about a thing that folks find harder to believe than almost anything else I have ever shown you, because it sounds like it cannot be true. You do not need a freezer to have ice in July. You do not need electricity. You do not need a compressor. You do not need to pay the power company one thin dime. You need the cold weather the good Lord sends free every winter, a place to keep it, and the old knowing of how to pack it so it lasts. My grandfather had an ice house. His father had one before him. Nearly every farm in this county once had one, and nearly every town had a great big one down by the water. And this is how a whole nation kept its food cold for well over 100 years before the first electric refrigerator was ever plugged into a wall. Now, I'm going to be honest with you the whole way through, the way I always am, because honest is worth more to me than clever. I will tell you exactly how it works and why. I will tell you how to build one, big or small, in the ground or above it. I will tell you how the old folks cut the ice off the pond and packed it away. I will tell you the mistakes that ruin the whole thing, and there are a few, and one of them will melt your whole winter store clean away by June if you get it wrong. And I will tell you the honest limits, where this serves a man well and where it does not, because I would rather you build it knowing the truth than build it dreaming and end up disappointed. Stay with me. By the end, you will understand a thing your great-great-grandparents knew in their bones, and that almost everyone alive today has clean forgotten. Let me start with the one idea that makes the whole thing possible, because once you see it plain, the rest of it falls into place and you will wonder why you never thought of it yourself. Most folks believe ice melts fast. They think of an ice cube on the kitchen counter, gone in 20 minutes, or a bag of ice in the trunk of the car turned to water by the time they get home. And so they cannot picture ice lasting a whole summer. But here's the thing they have got backwards. A little bit of ice melts fast. A great big lot of ice packed tight together and kept from the warm air melts astonishingly slow. It is not the same creature at all. There are two reasons, and I want you to hold both of them. The first is a plain matter of arithmetic that the old folks understood without ever putting a number to it. Heat can only get at ice from the outside, from the surface. The middle of a great block of ice is protected by all the ice around it. Now, when you double the size of a block of ice in every direction, you do not double the surface where the heat gets in. The surface grows a little, but the amount of ice inside grows a great deal more. So a big mass of ice has very little skin for its size, and the melting only happens at the skin. A single ice cube is almost all skin. A stack of ice the size of a small room is almost all middle, with only a thin skin exposed. That is why the little cube dies in an hour and the great mound lives for months. Bulk is the first secret. You never store ice in little scattered pieces. You store it as one great packed body. The bigger, the better, and the outside gives itself up slowly to protect the heart. The second reason is the one you may already half know, and it is a genuine marvel of the way water is made. It takes a tremendous amount of heat just to turn ice at the freezing point into water at the freezing point without raising the temperature 1 degree. Think on that. To warm a pound of cold water up by a single degree takes a certain small measure of heat. But to melt a pound of ice that is already sitting right at the melting point takes about 140 times that much heat, all of it swallowed up just in the changing from solid to liquid. The ice drinks in an enormous amount of heat and asks nothing in return but to slowly turn to water. So a big body of ice is like a great sponge for heat. It will sit there soaking up every bit of warmth that reaches it and give up only its melted outer edge, while the whole heart of it stays frozen solid and cold. Bulk on the one hand and this thirst for heat on the other. Put those two together and give the ice a good thick blanket, and you can carry the dead of winter clean through into the dog days of summer. Now let me show you that this is no farmer's tall tale, because there is history in it that would surprise you. There was a man up in Boston, Frederick Tudor, back around the year 1806, who got the notion that he would cut the ice off the ponds of New England in winter and sell it to the hot countries where they had never seen such a thing. Folks laughed at him. They called him a fool. His first shipment went to the island of Martinique, down in the warm Caribbean, and much of it melted because nobody down there knew how to store it. But he did not quit. He learned to pack the ice in sawdust from the sawmills, which was being thrown away for nothing, and sawdust turned out to be near about the finest insulation a man could ask for. And by the year 1833, this same fellow loaded a sailing ship with blocks of pond ice cut from Massachusetts, and he sent that ship all the way around the bottom of Africa, across the ocean, 4 months at sea in the tropical heat, to the city of Calcutta in India. And when it arrived, after 4 months, in a wooden ship crossing the equator twice, roughly 2/3 of that ice was still solid, still ice. No power, no machine, nothing but sawdust and the knowing of how to pack it. If a man can carry ice 4 months across the tropics in the belly of a sailing ship, you can surely keep it in a hole in the ground in your own back field through one summer. That is the proof of the thing. So let me take you through it one piece at a time, the way I would if you had walked over to my place to learn it. And we will start where the old folks started, which is not with the building at all. We will start with the ice itself, because you have to gather it before you have anything to store. The ice comes in the deep of winter off a pond, a lake, a slow creek, a stock tank, wherever clean water freezes good and thick and hard. And the very first word I have for you is the most important word in this whole video, so hear me plain. Ice on a pond is dangerous, and men have drowned cutting it, and I will not have you be one of them. You do not step out onto that ice until it is thick enough and hard enough to carry you, and then some. The old rule, the one they taught the children, is that clear, solid ice needs to be a good 4 inches thick before a man walks on it, and more than that before you trust it with a load or a horse. You test it at the edge first, you listen to it. You never go out alone. You keep a rope and a plank handy. Black ice, gray ice, ice with slush or bubbles, or a spring running under it, that ice you do not trust at all. I say this first because the ice is a gift, but the good Lord's cold is not to be trifled with, and no jug of cold milk in July is worth a man falling through in January. Now for storing, you do not want ice that is barely frozen. You want it thick. The old icemen waited for the pond to freeze 12, 14, even 18 inches deep in a hard winter, because the thicker the ice, the bigger and heavier your blocks, and the bigger the block, the slower it melts once it is stored. On account of that arithmetic I told you, thin ice makes thin blocks that die fast. Thick ice makes great heavy blocks that last. So you wait for a good hard freeze, a stretch of bitter days, and you let it grow thick before you cut. Here's how the cutting was done, and it is honest, heavy work, but there is nothing mysterious in it. First, you clear the snow off a patch of the pond, because snow on top slows the freezing and makes soft, cloudy ice, and you want it clear and hard. Then you mark out a grid, straight lines scored across the ice like a great checkerboard, so that every block comes out the same square size, and they will stack together tight without gaps. The old folks used a marker with a blade set at a fixed width, dragged behind a horse or by hand, cutting the same size squares every time, most often somewhere around 20 to 22 inches on a side. Then you cut down those scored lines with a long ice saw, a great tooth saw made just for this, until the blocks float free in the black water. A block that size out of a foot of ice weighs near 200 pounds, so a man works with tongs and ramps and other fellows to haul them out and onto a sledge. It is a whole day's work with the neighbors, the way a barn raising is, everybody together, breath steaming, and then a feast after. That is how the ice came in, cold, hard, heavy, and free, but for the labor. Now, where do you keep it? This is the building, and this is where most of the real cleverness lives. Let me give you the rules, and then you can build big or small to suit yourself. The first rule is, get it in the ground if you can. The earth a few feet down stays cool and steady all year round, cooler than the summer air by a good deal, and it works with you instead of against you. So the classic ice house is dug down into a hillside or into the ground, part cellar and part building. Even if you cannot dig deep, you set it low and bank earth up around the walls. The second rule is shade. You put it on the north side of a hill, or under trees, or on the shady side of the barn, out of the direct beat of the summer sun. Sun on a wall is heat coming through the wall. Shade is your friend here. The third rule, and this one folks forget and it costs them the whole store, is drainage. As the ice slowly melts at its edges, that meltwater has to run away and get gone. If the water pools up and sits at the bottom around your ice, the water carries heat right up against the ice and eats it away fast from the bottom, where you cannot even see it happening. So the floor of an ice house is not sealed tight like a cellar. It is gravel or stone or a slatted wood floor with a drain or a slope, so every drop of meltwater trickles away the moment it forms, and the ice stays sitting high and dry. Dry ice keeps. Ice standing in its own meltwater is a doomed thing. Remember that above all. The fourth rule is the walls. And here is where the whole principle of insulation comes to bear. You do not want the summer heat coming through the walls to reach your ice. So the walls are built double, 2 walls with a gap between them, and that gap is filled with something that stops heat. Sawdust again, or wood shavings, or straw, or dry leaves, or even ash packed into the cavity thick. A foot of packed sawdust in the wall is worth more than the thickest single board, and the roof gets the same treatment, thick and shaded and vented at the very peak, because here is a small point that catches people. You want a little air to move through the very top of the space up high to carry off the warm, damp air, but you do not want a draft blowing across the ice itself. A small vent at the peak lets the warm air escape without stirring the cold air down below. Cold air is heavy. It wants to sit low, down on the ice in a still pool. You let it. You just let the warm air breathe off the top. Now the packing, and this is the part that makes or breaks the whole enterprise, so listen close. You start with a good thick bed of sawdust on the floor of your ice house, a foot of it, dry sawdust, laid down over your gravel and your drain. Then you set your blocks of ice on that bed and you pack them tight, 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 one against the next. No air gaps between them, because every air gap is a place for warmth to get in and work. You lay them like a mason lays stone, snug and square, one course on top of the next, building up your great single body of ice. And wherever there is a crack or a corner or a gap between blocks, you fill it. You fill it with crushed ice, with snow, with chipped ice off the saw, tamped down so that the whole stack becomes one solid mass with no hollows in it. The goal, remember, is one great body, not a pile of separate lumps. The tighter you pack, the more it behaves like a single mountain of ice, and the slower it gives itself up. And then, when the whole is stacked, you bury it. You cover the entire mound over with a thick, thick blanket of sawdust, a foot deep at the least, better 2 feet, up over the top, and pack down the sides, tucking your ice in like a child under a heavy quilt, so that not one bit of the ice is left bare to the air. The sawdust is the coat. Sawdust holds a great deal of still air in among its particles, and still air is one of the finest insulators there is, and sawdust does not pack down and go useless the way some things do, and it drains and dries instead of rotting against the ice. If you have no sawdust, clean dry straw does nearly as well, or wood shavings, or chaff off the threshing, or even dry autumn leaves in a pinch. But sawdust is the king of it, and the sawmills give it away, and that is what the old ice trade was built on. So now it is spring, and your ice house is full. One great buried mound of winter under 2 feet of sawdust in a cool, shaded, well-drained, double-walled little building. How do you use it through the summer without ruining it? Gently and by rule. You keep that door shut. Every time you open it, warm summer air rolls in, so you go in quick with purpose and out again, and you shut it tight behind you. You do not stand there with the door open visiting. When you want ice, you go to one spot, one corner, and you brush back the sawdust just there, just enough to get at a block, and you lift out what you need, and then you tuck the sawdust right back over the ice you left, covering it again the moment you are done, so it is never sitting bare. You work always from the same face, taking the ice down bit by bit, and you keep the rest buried and undisturbed. A man who tears the whole blanket off to look at his ice and leaves it open and takes a little here and a little there all over, that man will lose his store by midsummer. A man who keeps it covered and works it careful will have ice in September. What did the old folks do with it, and what can you do with it? Well, the ice itself you use to fill an ice box, which is just a well-insulated wooden cabinet, the grandfather of the refrigerator, with a compartment up top for a block of ice and shelves below kept cold by the cold air sinking down off that block. You put your ice up top, your milk and butter and meat below, and it keeps them cold as any modern fridge, with the ice lasting several days between trips to the ice house. You chill your milk straight from the cow so it keeps sweet. You keep your butchered meat cold in the summer instead of losing it. You make cold drinks, and on a Sunday, hand-cranked ice cream for the children, which was a great treat and still is at our place. And there is the melt water too. Cold, clean water for the cooling of milk cans run in a trough. Nothing is wasted. The ice does its work as it slowly dies, and even its dying gives you cold water. Now, let me be plain about the mistakes, because I would rather you learn them from me than from a summer's worth of ruined ice. The first and worst mistake is bad drainage, letting the meltwater pool up under the ice. It will eat your store from underneath while you think all is well. Slope your floor, keep a drain, keep the ice up dry on its bed of sawdust. The second mistake is too little insulation. Folks put a few inches of sawdust and think it enough. It is not. A foot minimum, top and sides, and more is better. Skimp on the sawdust, and the summer will find your ice. The third mistake is small, scattered ice. If you store little pieces or leave big air gaps between blocks, you have made your ice all skin and no heart, and it will melt away. Pack it into one tight, great body. The fourth mistake is opening it too often and leaving it uncovered. Discipline, one face, quick in and out, always recover. The fifth mistake is cutting thin, poor ice or dirty ice. Wait for a good hard freeze, a foot thick if you can get it. Clear and clean, and your blocks will be big and heavy and long lasting. Get those 5 right and you will not fire. Now the honest limits, because I promised them and I always keep that promise. This is a cold country skill. It wants a real winter, a stretch of weather cold enough and long enough to freeze a pond a good foot thick. If you live down in the deep south, in Florida or along the Gulf, where the ponds never freeze hard, you cannot cut your own ice, and this is not for you, not the harvesting part, and I will not pretend otherwise. There is no magic that makes ice appear where the winter does not make it. If you live where the winters are hard in the north, in the mountains, up in the plains, this is a genuine, proven thing you can do. The second honest limit is that it is heavy work, gathered once a year, all at once, with help. It is not a thing you do alone in an afternoon. It is a neighbors together, once a winter labor, the way the old barn raisings were. And the third honest thing is that your ice will slowly shrink through the summer, no matter how well you do it. A good ice house loses some to melt, always. You cut and store more than you think you will need, knowing you will lose a share of it, and the loss is the price you pay, paid once in winter in labor instead of every month to a power company forever. And for the person listening who has no pond and no farm and no wish to cut ice off a lake, do not think this is nothing to you, because the principle scales all the way down. Take a good insulated cooler or a chest line thick with foam and pack it with block ice. Not cubes, one big block or several, tight together with sawdust or crumpled newspaper or wool packed all around, and keep it out of the sun with the lid shut. And you will find that block ice packed that way outlasts loose ice many times over. The bigger the block and the thicker the insulation and the tighter it is packed, the longer it holds. It is the same three laws in a small box: bulk, insulation, drainage. Freeze water in a milk jug or a bread pan to make your own blocks, and you will keep a cooler cold for days on end where cubes would have failed you in hours. The old knowledge works at every size, from a picnic chest to a room dug in a hill. Now I want to take a moment, because this is the part that matters, and it is bigger than sawdust and ice saws. Think for a moment about what the refrigerator really is and what it costs you. It is a fine machine, I will not say otherwise, and it runs day and night, every hour of every day, all year long, burning electricity the whole while, and you pay for every hour of it on the bill that comes each month. That machine is at its heart doing the very same job the ice house does, keeping your food cold, only it does it by burning power without ceasing, and it sends you the bill without ceasing, and when it breaks, you buy another. And it makes you helpless, because the day the power goes out in a storm, everything in it turns warm and spoils, and there is not a thing you can do. The man with the ice house is not helpless. When the grid goes dark in a July storm, his ice sits down in the ground exactly as cold as it was the day before, asking nobody's permission and paying nobody's bill. And here is the quiet truth about why you never heard of this, and it is the same truth I keep coming back to on this channel. It is not that some villain hid it from you. It is simpler and almost worse than that. There is no money in it. Cold weather is free. A pond is free. Sawdust the sawmill throws away. A man who cuts his own ice in winter and stores it in a hole in the ground buys no machine, pays no monthly bill, needs no repairman and no filter and no new model next year. You cannot sell a monthly bill to a man who keeps his own cold in the ground. There is no fortune to be made in teaching a family to do for themselves for free what a company would dearly love to sell them forever. So the knowing was not destroyed. It was just left to gather dust on a high shelf quietly, because quiet does not sell, while the machine that bills you every month got the big advertisement and the place of honor in every kitchen. My people never fully forgot, because we never gave ourselves over wholly to the wire and the bill in the first place. A family that can keep its own food cold with the winter's own gift is a family that is harder to put in a corner. That is the whole of it. So here is what I want you to do. If you live where the winter comes hard, look at your ground this year with new eyes. Look at that pond or that low corner or that shaded north bank, and think about whether a small ice house might go there, dug in, drained, double-walled, packed with sawdust. Start small if you like, a single deep pit lined and insulated, and store just enough to run an ice box and cool your milk, and see it through one summer with your own eyes. And even if you never cut a pond, take a cooler and a block of ice and pack it thick and tight this very week, and watch how long it holds, and you will believe the whole of what I have told you. The winter sends its cold for free every single year, and almost nobody catches it. You can be one of the few who does. Tell me in the comments below, does your winter freeze hard enough to cut ice where you are, or are you down where the ponds stay open all year? And if your grandmother or grandfather kept an ice box, or your family ever had an ice house, tell us what you remember of it, the sawdust smell, the great blocks, the Iceman's wagon, because those memories are the very knowledge I'm trying to keep alive here. And the stories you all share teach the new folks more than I ever could. I read every single one. Next time, since we have spoken of keeping cold, I'm going to show you the old way my people built the icebox itself, the wooden cabinet that turned a block of stored ice into a working cold pantry in the kitchen so you can use the ice you store. It is the natural next step after today. Until then, catch the cold the winter gives you, pack it tight, keep it dry, and remember the people who built this country with their hands knew things we are only just starting to remember.